Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GIIN Town Hall launch of Iris Plus. This is an extremely exciting day at the GIIN and for the impact investing industry. My name is Kelly McCarthy, and I've had the privilege of leading the GIIN's work on Iris and impact measurement and management for investors more broadly since I joined the GIIN 8 years ago this month. And so it is my pleasure today to be hosting this webinar where we're introducing Iris Plus for the very first time. Today's format is very simple. We'll start with some opening remarks to introduce Iris Plus and why it matters. We'll then pause for questions before moving to a walkthrough of the main features of Iris Plus, as well as a demo showing Iris Plus in action. Then we'll move into a discussion about the system itself, how Iris Plus can support your impact investing efforts, and we'll conclude with a few closing remarks about what's next. Over the course of the hour, you'll hear from Amit Bouri, the GIIN CEO, whose vision and leadership for the growth of the impact investing market has inspired the priorities behind Iris Plus, as well as Leticia Emme and Lisa Glasgow, who've been at the helm of developing the Iris Plus system. Before we get started, I want to just go over a couple of housekeeping items. Hopefully, you've been able to sign on through the ReadyTalk platform. You'll see that there's a chat box at the left-hand corner of your screen where you can type us directly. Please chat us your questions or comments anytime during this conversation, and we'll try to get to as many as we can during each segment. One other logistical note, I want to let everyone know we are recording this broadcast. We've had an overwhelming response to the launch, and many who wanted to join were not able to. We will be sharing it on our website and on social media so that it will be available more broadly. Now I'd like to turn it over to Amit Bouri, who is the co-founder and chief executive officer of the GIIN. Amit's going to say a few words about what Iris Plus is, how it'll help investors, and why we believe it's needed in order to ensure the impact investing industry can scale with integrity. Amit?
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you all to all of you for joining us here today. We're thrilled to launch this virtually because this has absolutely been a global effort, and we're thrilled to reach such a large group of people all around the world. Before I dive in, I'd like to give a special thanks to the 800 plus stakeholders who contributed to the development of Iris Plus. Iris Plus crowds in insights from the whole market as a platform, and that has been true to its development as well. With the GIIN are very much a collective action platform, and this has been an effort of a network of networks or a team of teams, and I really appreciate all the input we've gotten from our stakeholders all around the world. I also do want to take a moment to acknowledge the team here at the GIIN who's been leading the charge on this effort. Specifically Kelly McCarthy, who's been leading the Iris Plus team, but also Leticia and Lisa, who you'll hear from shortly, and Adam Dolan, who've all been working very hard to bring us to this day. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the GIIN, I just want to take a moment to explain who we are and why this is so important to us. The GIIN is the global champion of impact investing. We're a network of practitioners, investment leaders from all around the world. Everything we do is in service of helping investors have a greater impact on the world's most pressing issues. Our goal is to drive much more capital to the highest impact projects all around the world. And we want to build financial markets that are not just generating more capital, but markets that are generating more impact and creating the world that we all want to live in. The GIIN has been working hard with our network on developing the impact investing ecosystem for the last 10 years, developing industry infrastructure, convening investors and other stakeholders, and also conducting critical market research. Last year, we set out to set the agenda for the next decade of impact investing. And we launched a vision for the market, for a future where impact is integrated into all financial decisions, where factoring social and environmental impact into investing is the new normal, the new business as usual. A future where we operate a financial system that serves all stakeholders, not just investors, but also people and the planet. And to reach that vision, we published a market roadmap, a plan of action for how we can realize that change in the market. And one of the key priorities in that roadmap is to strengthen the identity of impact investing by establishing best practices for impact measurement and management. And IMM, or Impact Measurement Management, has always been at the heart of the GIIN's work. Over the last decade, we've maintained and expanded the IRIS catalogs, and many of you have been part of that journey. Building on this decade of experience and to contribute to achieving our vision, we at the GIIN are doubling down on our efforts to take impact measurement and management practice to the next level of sophistication. This is an incredibly exciting time in impact investing. As you all know, the interest in the market is booming all around the world. And we recently published our estimate of the market size, which put impact investing today at $502 billion globally. The market is scaling quickly, and we see lots of opportunity for large asset owners, for fund managers, and for businesses seeking capital. We see growing momentum around the Sustainable Development Goals and achieving the climate accords. But despite all this progress and all this momentum, we think it's critical to underscore the fact that we are nowhere near as big as we need to be. And when we think about size and its scale, we are not just talking about capital at scale, but we need to achieve impact at scale. If we are truly to have an impact on the Sustainable Development Goals, we have to be operating at a dramatically different scale, and it's absolutely critical for us to think about how we can move the market to a whole different level. And that won't be easy, because we really need to figure out how we can elevate our collective game to do so. In the past, impact investors have struggled to measure the impact of their investments rigorously. And at times, investors have had to develop their own approaches from scratch, and sometimes have been relegated to making decisions based on hunches or instinct. We absolutely need greater sophistication in our thinking around achieving impact if we are to achieve our vision. One of the things that's a bright spot is that there's much more increased understanding of why investors need to measure and manage and communicate about impact. We're seeing a lot more demand for impact measurement from mainstream asset owners, long-term investors like pension funds and insurance companies who see social and environmental impact as critical to long-term sustainable financial performance. And we're seeing greater demand from society at large for financial markets that have a positive impact. And all these forces are driving more investors to impact investing. Most investors entering the market do not have decades of experience in impact investing or in even thinking about how they can achieve impact. And we've observed many new investors entering the market who have been overwhelmed by the proliferation of different tools, frameworks, resources, and methods available to think about how to achieve impact. As I've been traveling around the world, in my role at the GIIN, to places like Hong Kong, London, Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Nairobi, Paris, Berlin, and beyond, one thing I hear absolutely consistently from investors and entrepreneurs is that there are a few pain points that seem to be applying universally. One is that investors don't readily know which metrics are the most meaningful to use. A second pain point is that many investors are struggling to put conventions and frameworks, which look great on paper, into the actual practice of their businesses. We also hear many investors saying it's really difficult to navigate the multitude of tools that are available. In our Impact Toolkit, we have over 150 tools that we track here at the GIIN. And the fourth pain point is just the absence of comparable data when it comes to impact is limiting investors' ability to make informed decisions. They're effectively operating in a vacuum. So when we think about conventional investing, it's unacceptable to make investments based on gut feelings or best guesses. And it shouldn't be any different when it comes to impact investing. We have a diverse and global impact investment community. I believe that's an incredible strength. One thing that's so powerful about our community is that we are united in our conviction to use investment to address the massive global challenges that we're facing. Those challenges targeted by the SDGs and the climate accords. The challenges the world is facing are too urgent for impact capital to underperform. And we need to get as smart about achieving impact as we are about achieving financial performance. And that brings us to Iris Plus, which we believe is a powerful step change in impact measurement and management. So Iris Plus is a system that allows investors to translate impact intentions into real impact results. We're incredibly excited to launch Iris Plus for all the investors and the entrepreneurs around the world who care about having a positive impact. One way to think about the role that Iris Plus will serve in the market is as an analog for what we have in GAAP accounting, standardized accounting principles that guide the way that the financial markets function. Iris Plus effectively provides a generally accepted impact accounting system. It's designed to increase data clarity and comparability, to provide practical guidance that investors need, all in one kind of easy to navigate system, and to really help you go from your upfront investment strategy to the relevant data points that you can use to run your business or run your portfolio. We've built it to reduce confusion, to increase comparability, and to make it easier to communicate impact results. And whether you are using the SDGs or another framework, Iris Plus will guide you to the data points you need to measure and manage impact effectively. So Iris Plus is for investors and enterprises focused on impact. And that's everything from huge global institutions to small, specialized local boutiques. It's investors who are sophisticated about impact measurement, who want to help deepen their work. But it's also incredibly useful for people who are just getting started. I recently, when I think about the value that Iris Plus will offer, think about many of the conversations I have with investors all around the world. Just last month, I met with the head of a major asset manager who's thinking about shifting from thinking about how they mitigate risk to proactively investing in solutions to issues like climate change and other factors. And he's personally very motivated by clean energy access. But one of the things he's struggling to figure out is how does he know if he's doing a good job? When it comes to conventional investing, he knows the metrics to track, whether it's things like kind of price per square foot for retail or same-store sales growth or other metrics that really help him understand his performance. But he wants to be as sharp as how he achieves about how he achieves his impact as he is about how he manages financial performance. And Iris Plus is designed to help him leverage all the great thinking that's been done all around the world on these issues and put those at his fingertips so he can put those to practice in his portfolio. One of the things that we hear in all these anecdotes, and what's familiar to all of you, is the need for credible, comparable impact data. We need it to inform impact investment decisions for your portfolios. And at a market level, we need it to safeguard the integrity of impact investing. Without good data, investors will not be able to assess whether their capital is being deployed in the most effective ways. It is absolutely essential to inform investors and business leaders alike whether they're actually achieving the impact that they're seeking. And this will only be possible through greater standardization of practice and transparency. And Iris Plus has been created to make this possible. Before I hand it back to Kelly, I just want to zoom out for a moment to take a look at the big picture, why this really matters. We at the GIIN have been talking about the need for scale with integrity. We need more capital going to solutions all around the world, but we also need to make sure that that money counts and it's having the impact that we want it to achieve. Impact measurement and management is central to this. And in fact, that's why it's central to the GIIN's core characteristics, which we recently launched to define credible impact investing. It's part of what makes impact investing distinctive from business as usual. I hope that guesswork around impact becomes a thing of the past. We are launching Iris Plus with the intention of helping the entire investment community become much more intelligent about how to achieve impact. We have to make sure that we're scaling the right thing. We need to spur a race to the top. We need to be able to answer the question of how we can manage investments to achieve the greatest impact over time. And we at the GIIN are calling on asset owners and managers to demonstrate their leadership by requiring the gathering and sharing of credible, comparable data. And Iris Plus is the most comprehensive system to drive this shift in practice. So Kelly, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Amit. We will turn to Leticia in a few minutes, but first we're going to field some questions for Amit. And just a reminder, we've had a lot of questions coming in, but feel free to chat your questions into the platform, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can. Amit, we have a question about impact washing. So you talked a little bit about the integrity. Can you talk a little bit about how Iris Plus addresses impact washing?
Yes, and thank you for this important question. It's something that we're spending a lot of time thinking about at the GIIN. So for those of you who don't know, impact washing is referring to, the way I'd put it is a dilution of impact over time. So people either deliberately overclaiming with the impact that they're having or unintentionally because they don't really know any better. Either way, it's a serious risk to the market. One of the things that is so powerful about impact investing and why it has galvanized so much energy and momentum from around the world is that people know that we need to do things differently. And the conviction and belief that we can actually put our money to work to have a positive impact has been incredibly energizing, to people who are running major financial institutions and to ordinary citizens who are thinking about their own assets. So it's important for us to not let that kind of, that powerful force to be unraveled. And so we think it's critical that we build in the practices, the norms, and the tools that make sure that impact investing has that focus on impact as we continue to grow it. I think Iris Plus is essential to that, but it's part of a bigger picture. So we launch our core characteristics to set baseline expectations for what good impact investing looks like. Now, what that needs to be, though, is actually something that people can put into practice. I think that's where Iris Plus comes in. So you can actually link your strategy, and Leticia and Lissa will talk you through this shortly about what this looks like in practice. But you can take your strategy of what impact you're trying to achieve and link that to the right metrics to use that are backed up by the best evidence that we can find from leading researchers around the world. So my hope, and the reason why we're launching Iris Plus, is that it helps us to strengthen the quality of impact that we achieve as a market, which I think is not only critical to the growth of impact investing, but ultimately it's critical to what motivates me, and I expect all of you to do this work, which is the need that we have to change the financial system in a way that actually moves the needle on the huge issues that we're facing as a world, whether it be climate change or inequality globally, or how it affects our local communities.
Great, thanks, Amit. You talked a lot about the broadening and the scaling of the impact investing market, and we have a question coming in about what is it that you specifically want investors to do now that we have these tools available and increasing sort of sophistication and demand for better impact measurement and management.
No, thank you for that. And it's I think this is a time as we see that the market is growing dramatically. For anyone who is currently an impact investor, I hope that you see yourself as a leader in shaping the future of this market. Whether you've been doing this for decades or if you've just started, we have to set the tone for the way this market evolves. So how you can do that? So first, you can adopt the core characteristics of impact investing. I mentioned this briefly in my remarks. They're available on our website. But we think adoption of those characteristics will help set a baseline of practice for impact investing. Now, we also need to implement the right tools that help create a market that can move the needle at massive global issues at scale. And that is where things like Iris Plus comes in. Financial markets move massive amounts of capital because there are things that are standardized, like the generally accepted accounting principles or GAAP. We need comparable things for impact accounting, and that's one of the reasons why we've launched Iris Plus. Because if we're using the same measures, it allows us to build a market that can scale, and it allows us to make sure that we are driving capital to the things that will have the greatest impact. But that will only happen by investors, large and small, incorporating Iris Plus into the way that you operate. So asset owners, you can put this to work across your portfolio and make sure that you're embedding this in the way you work with your direct investments, your asset managers. And for all the asset managers, I think this is a powerful tool to help you have the right conversations with the businesses that you're investing in to make sure that you're all working towards the right goals and are operationalizing those aspirations with the right metrics. So I think that every single kind of stakeholder in this market has a role to play in making sure that Iris Plus becomes generally accepted practice. And that will help shape the way that this market evolves going forward.
Great, thanks. And we're going to move along in one moment, but the last question for you, Amit, and then we're going to have a broader Q&A at the end. You mentioned 150 plus other tools. Can you talk a little bit about, is Iris Plus just another tool to sit alongside the other ones that you spoke about, or how do you see this fitting in or relating to the other resources that exist in the market?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. We've also spent a lot of time thinking about this, and for those of you who have been part of this journey with us over the past decade, and some of you have been working on these issues for much longer. One thing that's so exciting about the way that the space of impact measurement has evolved is that there's so many more tools and resources available. And I see that as there are a lot of positive things that have come from that. People have been looking at tools that look at specific sectors and specific geographies, and we're getting much smarter, and we have much more resources at our fingertips, to put to work. The downside of that, though, is for most investors, it's incredibly hard to navigate. I recently had a conversation with the CIO of a major pension fund who said that they recently did an inventory of the various things that they were using for impact measurement management, and it was over 70. And he was concerned about the number of people he had on his team who actually understood all 70 of those things and what that meant for the quality of practice in his own team. And so I think one of the things that we know we need to do, both for experienced impact investors and for ones who are new to the market, is help streamline this. And it's in the DNA of Iris since our earliest days that we work with a lot of other organizations who are setting standards or who are developing tools and resources and doing research on these issues. And that has only been enhanced in the launch of Iris Plus. So many of the metrics that are in Iris have been developed in partnership with a variety of great organizations all around the world. So we've tried to crowd in the best thinking from organizations and individual experts. We also, I mentioned earlier that there's evidence that we've used to help back up the metrics that are in Iris Plus. The vast majority of that evidence is third party. So it's bringing in evidence from other people who have been doing research on what are the levers that we can use to have issues or have impact on issues like healthcare access, and clean energy access, sustainable forestry, and so on. So we've created Iris Plus to both kind of crowd in the best thinking from around the world. We have a lot of external resources built into the platform, and it's designed to be compatible with a number of the other important frameworks that are out there. whether they be huge global frameworks like the SDGs, or frameworks that are more specific to the impact investing space, like the 5 dimensions of impact. And so our hope is that this can be a one-stop shop that helps you figure out what are the resources around the world that you need for your specific portfolio and your strategy. Thank you for the question.
Great, thanks. And we will get to, we'll hopefully get to the remaining, your remaining questions after we hear from Leticia Emme, Senior Manager and Key Lead on the development of the IRIS Plus system, who's next going to provide an overview of the key features. Leticia?
Thank you, Kelly. As Amit said, the GIIN developed IRIS Plus to solve for the key pain points that investors face today and that hinder their ability to practice high-quality IMM on a consistent basis. IRIS Plus is developed based on the over 10 years of experience of the GIIN and with contributions from over 800 stakeholders around the world, including many of you on the line today. I would like to highlight 3 key features of IRIS Plus. First, the core metric sets. These are short lists of key indicators, all built on standard IRIS metrics that will help investors understand and measure their impact performance. Core metric sets are key for data clarity and comparability, and they solve investors' struggle in comparing impact performance. Second is streamlined evidence-based research, practical guidance, and best-in-class resources. We know that investors need more than evidence to improve, more than metrics to improve their IMM. But as Amit was saying, we also know that often they struggle to navigate the hundreds of resources, tools, and frameworks out there and identify which are best in class and which are relevant to them. IRIS Plus solves for this by streamlining only the ones that are relevant, specific to the needs and priorities of each investor. And third, of course, the IRIS catalog of metrics lives in IRIS Plus. We've updated the catalog to include new metrics in areas where we identified that we had gaps, and we've also aligned the catalog to the SDGs, the 5 dimensions of impact, and to the IRIS thematic taxonomy. You might be thinking, wow, IRIS Plus sounds great, but what about my own framework that my organization spent years in designing? Let us clarify one very important point. IRIS Plus is framework agnostic, which means that you can use it with any other method or system for analyzing, measuring, and reporting impact performance. And as Amit was saying before, just like the accountancy profession standardized accounting principles with GAAP, IRIS Plus provides a generally accepted impact accounting system. So over the next few minutes, I will walk you through some of the key features that IRIS Plus offers, and then my colleague Lisa will provide a demo on how the system works. As you can already see on the screen, or if you already went online today, IRIS Plus looks quite different than the IRIS you used to know. IRIS Plus is a system that for the first time brings together standards and norms, while also adapts to the specific priorities and needs of each investor. Because we know that while standards and norms are key to make sure that we all speak the same language, we also know that the values and priorities of each investor are unique, and therefore the impact of each investor is unique. So with IRIS Plus, investors can find all the information they need, tailored to their priorities and needs, all in one place. So I just said that IRIS Plus brings all the information you need all in one place, tailored to your needs. What does that mean? So let me show you with an example. What you see here on the screen is an example of a result set that IRIS Plus provides. So let's pretend for a minute that you're an investor working in financial inclusion with the specific aim to improve financial health for rural communities in India. What you see on the screen is the results that IRIS Plus will prepare for you, specific for your needs. And you'll see that on the left-hand side, we have several tabs. These tabs are all the different elements or components of your result set. The first one is a summary. which is the one in which we're in right now. This provides an overview of the strategic goal in question, in this case, improving financial health. It also shows you the different SDGs that are related to the strategic goal so that you can understand your impact performance in relationship to the SDGs. The other tabs here include an overview of the research related to this goal, the evidence behind this goal, the core metric sets, specific guidance related to this goal, as well as a summary of best-in-class and relevant resources specific for this goal. Over the next couple minutes, we'll go back one by one to show you a little bit more what's in each of them. First, the overview section. This includes the research behind the strategic goal and is organized across the 5 dimensions of impact so that it helps you answer the following questions. What is the problem? Who is affected? How much change is happening? What is the contribution? And what is the risk of the outcome being different than expected? We've worked with expert partners to look at the research behind each of these questions. In the example that we just started, where we asked you to pretend that you're an investor in financial inclusion working to increase or to improve financial health, we looked at the research to help understand, for example, what is the size of the problem. What research says is that there's 4 billion people worldwide with limited access to assets in times of crisis. Research also shows that only 27% of adults worldwide have access to formal savings accounts. So this section provides you with the research that you need to understand how your strategic goal answers each of these questions so that you can communicate the issues that you're working towards in a common way. As Amit was saying earlier, we know that investments cannot be designed based on hunches. Impact investors need to rely on data and on evidence. But until now, there hasn't been a place that gathered the evidence base behind common investment strategies. Iris Plus solves for this. By working with expert partners, we've gathered the evidence that connects each strategic goal, in our example, improving financial health, with specific outcomes, such as increased savings or reduced reliance on informal networks. What you see here on the screen is a list of different academic studies and field literature that connect this strategic goal with certain and specific outcomes. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see other little stars for each of these studies available. What these stars indicate is the level of rigor of the study, and we've ranked them based on NESTA standards of evidence. Next, and a key feature of Iris Plus, are the core metric sets. Core metric sets are a big step forward in the industry in terms of providing data clarity and comparability. Until now, investors have struggled with how to compare data across portfolios in a common way. The only way to speak apples to apples for investments with similar goals and within the same investment themes is to start from the same base of key indicators. And this is what core metric sets provide. They're the short list of key indicators, all built on standard IRIS metrics that any investor needs to understand and compare their impact performance. They're built on over a decade of the GIIN's experience in managing the IRIS catalog of metrics, and they include feedback from hundreds of stakeholders around the world. Further, each core metric set underwent a 30 to 60-day public comment period. By using core metric sets, investors can be automatically up to date with the cutting edge of impact measurement and management, and they can understand their performance in alignment with the SDGs, the 5 dimensions of impact, and other leading frameworks. All that said, while core metric sets are critical to enable data clarity and comparability, we also know that depending on the priorities, approach, and the context of each investment, investors will need indicators that are unique and specific to that approach. So to that end, core metric sets also allow users to add any custom metrics or indicators that they need to tailor their core metric sets to their specific needs. Lisa, in a few minutes, will show us in the demo how that's done. As Amit said earlier, the only way to ensure that the market scales with integrity is by ensuring that high-quality IMM becomes the norm for all impact investors. And while key indicators and evidence are key pieces of this puzzle, they won't alone change practice. So for that, IRIS Plus provides practical guidance. At the moment, we have two types of guidance: fundamental guidance and how-to guidance. Fundamental guidance describes the core concepts underpinning IRIS Plus-based IMM. Some examples that you can see on the screen are IRIS Plus thematic taxonomy, IRIS Plus on the SDGs, IRIS Plus on the 5 dimensions, and IRIS Plus core metric sets. We have a second category of guidance that is the how-tos. These are very practical and specific, and they include examples of practice that we've developed in partnership with experts. For example, how to use IRIS Plus for decision-making, and how to use IRIS Plus to incorporate stakeholder voice. There's a third type of guidance on use cases of IRIS Plus that we'll incorporate going forward. And over time, as we identified further needs of investors for specific types of guidance, we will be developing more guidance to address those needs. Finally, we recognize that there's a great number of third-party resources that can be helpful for investors. But like we were saying before, we know that it's incredibly hard for investors to navigate the hundreds of resources and identify which are best practice and which ones are relevant for their needs. IRIS Plus solves for that. As you can see here, for your result set, IRIS Plus only shows you the results, the third-party resources that are relevant to you and that they're best in class. We just saw an example of all the different elements that live inside a single portfolio. In our example, that was for an investment that I asked you to pretend in financial inclusion with the goal to improve financial health. But we know that investors typically manage multiple investment portfolios at the same time, and that these have different impact goals. This means that investors will need different key indicators, different resources and evidence relevant to the specific needs of each of their investments. IRIS Plus allows investors to manage multiple portfolios at once. In the screen here, for example, you can see examples of profile on clean energy access, as well as two different examples of investments with different goals within financial inclusion. So now that you have a flavor of what IRIS Plus offers, I will pass it to my colleague Lisa, who will show you a demo of IRIS Plus, and then we'll go back to Kelly for Q&A.
Leticia showed you the amazing key features of IRIS Plus, which the GIIN developed based on over a decade of experience and hundreds of expert insights. And so, how do I set IRIS Plus up to work for me? Let's say I'm managing a portfolio of investments, broadly aiming to increase women's leadership. I might be thinking, like a lot of you, about how my investments are contributing towards the SDGs. Or I might be thinking about my portfolio in terms of impact categories. Either way, IRIS Plus will curate according to my needs. So let's choose the diversity and inclusion category, which aligns with my portfolio, and I'll click on the gender lens theme. And it looks like the strategic goal on governance, leadership, and ownership maps well with my approach. And it's just that easy and streamlined. With just a little bit of information from me, IRIS Plus has pulled together the best of the best resources, expert insights, and guidance for my needs. It tells me which SDGs I align to. It gives me clear, practical background on my goals. What the problem looks like, who's affected, how much of a change my investments might create, what risks I might run, and what other examples of similar investments might look like. When I'm ready to think about metrics, The core metric set gives me a short list of key indicators that set me up for clear and comparable impact data. For each of these indicators, I can click in to get more information. Right up front, it explains why I need this information. What insights is it going to help me get? I get the underlying IRIS metrics that help me get that data, and a step-by-step explanation of how to calculate. All of this gives me what I need to make sure that my data is clear and comparable within similar investments. It's all incredibly easy and also customizable. Maybe in this example, I want to track a metric on employment benefits. I click on this Customize button, and it's added to my personal metrics set. I can explore the IRIS catalog and add a single metric. I can add multiple metrics. I can even group metrics into custom indicators. Whatever I need, IRIS Plus can include. The remaining tabs over here give me practical guidance on using IRIS Plus, which includes straightforward and simple explanations of how to use IRIS Plus with the SDGs, IRIS Plus with the 5 dimensions, how to use IRIS Plus with investment decision-making, and others. We've also got an evidence map, and based on my impact goals, a curated set of resources that can help me do my impact measurement and management work more effectively. It basically takes all of that confusion about which framework or tool to use when out of the picture and just gives me the right ones. So IRIS Plus makes it simple. All of my impact intentions organized the way I want to see them, all in one place, and connected to the goals and tools I need to turn those intentions into real results.
Thanks, Lissa, very much. Now that you've all had a glimpse into the key features and an introduction about how IRIS Plus might work for you, let's turn to your questions. We've had a lot of questions coming in, so we will do our best to get to as many as we possibly can. The first question is about the growth of IRIS Plus over time. This particular participant is curious to hear how IRIS Plus is going to change or grow as insights and needs for impact change over time. Leticia, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Kelly. Yes, so IRIS Plus will continue to grow over time on a number of different ways. On the one hand, we will continue to increase coverage of impact investing themes and core metric sets. And at the same time, we'll continue to include guidance and best practice from investors as the field continues to evolve. As we said, IRIS Plus was built also with the contribution of over 800 stakeholders. This is a key aspect for us going forward as well. And so you can go to the IRIS Plus website, and if you're interested in taking part, just make sure you sign in and you send us a note to collaborate in the development of IRIS.
Great. The next question is about how, basically how we approached building the system. And Leticia, I'm actually going to hand this to you as well. How were the people who are supposed to be positively impacted involved in defining impact?
That's a great question. So thank you for asking us that, and that's something that to us is very important. So we wanted to make sure that the voice of those who are ultimately receiving the impact was part of our process. And we did that in a number of ways. On the one hand, we made sure to include in our engagement with enterprises as well as networks of enterprises, such as ANDI or SPTF, that will represent the voice of the enterprises working directly with stakeholders. But also understanding that listening to the voice of stakeholders and incorporating that into normal practice of investor is key, is that we partner with experts to develop specific guidance on how incorporating the voice of stakeholder should and can be part of everybody's, of all investors' day-to-day IMM.
Great. Lisa, this question is for you. So, this participant, thanks you for the helpful demo. Curious about whether this is just for newcomers, or if you can talk a little bit about how it addresses, different the different levels of sort of sophistication in experience.
Certainly. Definitely not designed just for newcomers, although we've incorporated a number of pieces of guidance and kind of help text for those who are coming into the space for the first time. We've engaged with a lot of different folks in developing this system, and as we worked through that process, we learned a lot about what different actors at different levels of sophistication would need to strengthen their impact measurement and management practices. And what we found is not just that the process was helpful for those folks who were stepping into the space for the first time or were perhaps stepping into new impact themes or sectors for the first time, but we actually heard a lot back from folks who had been in this space actively investing for impact for quite some time, and they told us quite a bit about how kind of streamlining the evidence that was out there and having a concerted effort and a general agreement amongst many different actors about what those critical pieces of information were and how you could best go about the impact measurement and management practice. We heard that was really helpful for them as well. So certainly not just for newcomers, and we pretty firmly believe that it'll be helpful for all actors in the impact investing space.
Great. So we have a follow-on question from the demo. A couple of folks noted the particular guidance resources, as well as recognized, some familiar, some familiar nods to other efforts in the market, such as GRI and the 5 dimensions we discussed. Leticia, can you talk a little bit about and just help participants understand how IRIS Plus relates to, for example, the 5 dimensions or the SDGs, or some of the things that we've articulated in those guidance pieces?
Of course. So as we mentioned before, IRIS Plus is framework agnostic, which means that it can be used with any framework or convention, including, of course, for example, the SDGs and the 5 dimensions of impact. Particular for these two, so the guidance pieces that you saw out there will provide you all the details that you need. But both the SDGs and the 5 dimensions are very well integrated into IRIS Plus. So both in terms of, for example, the result set that we were looking at before, you will see for a specific strategic goal, the SDGs that are relevant for that strategic goal. And also when you look at your core metric set, that's organized along the 5 dimensions of impact, so that you can describe and report your impact performance following that convention. That's on the core metric set or the result set side. At the same time, for those interested in looking at the IRIS catalog of metrics that you can view both online on IRIS Plus, and you can also download as an Excel, you will see that we have aligned each individual IRIS metrics to the SDGs at the target level, as well as to the 5 dimensions of impact. And I will also take advantage of this moment to also say that while these two framework and conventions are, of course, very related to IRIS Plus, IRIS over the years has done alignments with over 50 different metric systems and standards, and all of these alignments are a key aspect of IRIS Plus, and you can find them all also in our website. And as we continue to evolve IRIS Plus, we'll make sure to continue to update and maintain these alignments up to date and develop new ones as well.
Thanks. We have a couple of questions specifically about the the system itself and how to actually use it. So I'm going to pass these over to Lissa. Can you talk a little bit more about setting up an impact profile and selecting impact categories as priorities? Specifically, there's a couple of folks who are interested in understanding if you have a diverse portfolio, for example, with a couple of different priorities, how do you facilitate that through the system? How do you facilitate managing multiple different priorities?
Yeah, definitely. So if you have a diverse portfolio, you're able to set up impact profiles or impact tiles specifically for those different pieces. And the reason that we did that is that it's in order to curate the evidence behind these different approaches, you need to actually separate them out a little bit. That does not mean that you can't think holistically about multiple different approaches within one fund or within one portfolio. It's entirely possible to customize the system to fit your needs and your particular questions. We made it so that you can actually customize the core metric sets and add in additional indicators according to your needs. And you can, of course, download all of those pieces if it's helpful to have one more meta and integrated set. So yeah, it can customize according to your needs.
Perfect. Thank you, Lissa. We have a couple of questions on data, and so we'll take those, and then hopefully we have a little bit more time. We have a long list here to get through, but the first question, Leticia, this is to you. How will this actually help with comparable data? Can you talk a little bit through, we've spoken a lot about IRIS Plus and comparability and data and clarity about performance. Can you address that a little bit more?
Yes, absolutely. So the first step for comparable data is to start from the same common key indicators and metrics. So this is a great step forward in terms of bringing together the agreement that investors and enterprises have reached in terms of what are the key indicators that matter for a number of different investment strategies and goals. So yeah, by looking at the different core metric sets and following those metrics and key indicators, investors will be able to have comparable data. As we were saying before, core metric sets have and offer key indicators that are all built on standard IRIS metrics. By being built on standard metrics and following those key indicators, we will be able to have comparable data. We also understand, as we were saying before, that there are some indicators that might be specific to the needs of each investors, and those might not be that comparable. But for the ones that are in the main sections of the core metric set, those will allow us to get to comparable data because they're all built on standard metrics. And also, as we saw in the demo, they all provide the step-by-step calculation guidance so that we make sure that when investors and enterprises are calculating each of these indicators, they do it in the same way.
Great. And just following on this data question, Amit, this is directed towards you. And this is really going back to sort of zooming out about the GIIN vision. And acknowledging today, obviously, is day one of IRIS Plus. But this question is asking about, whether or not, or is the GIIN thinking about providing data to really on the basis of IRIS Plus and more broadly. So can you talk a little bit about, how the GIIN is thinking about the role of data and how it relates to IRIS Plus?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that is so exciting about IRIS Plus, there's a lot of direct benefits in terms of what it offers to an investor or a business leader in terms of the resources that are available today. But as Leticia was just commenting on, it also sets the stage for comparable data. And that can be within a portfolio, so you invest in 10 businesses and you want to understand how your businesses are doing using the common metrics. Or it could be across multiple portfolios. If you invest in multiple funds that include companies all around the world, it helps you kind of distill down to the core metrics that you want to track on a portfolio basis. We have been getting a lot of inbound interest from investors in our network in the lead up to the launch of Iris Plus. I expect that will only continue now that it's out in the market about can the GIIN play a role in helping to aggregate data and provide benchmarking services. We're absolutely thinking about the right strategy for us to play in that space as we speak. I absolutely do think that it's important for us to have that as a market, and we expect that people will continue to build a whole bunch of businesses and their advisory services and analytics platforms using Iris Plus, feeding into it. But we're also trying to figure out the right role that we can play as a market builder and a provider of public goods, so that we can help to make sure that investors are operating in a context as opposed to in isolation of what impact performance looks like, and that they're able to use that data to inform their own practices, but building on what I mentioned earlier, to really spur a race to the top. I would love for us to get much sharper about how we think about impact performance and to actually push ourselves to be better as individual investors and as a collective market.
Thanks, Amit. And this is the last question. We have one participant who said they checked out the site and would love to get involved. So Leticia, I'm going to pass this over to you. We've talked a little bit about our stakeholder engagement process, and just curious if you can talk a little bit about how folks can get involved if they want to reach out to us.
Yes, of course. So stakeholder engagement has been a very important part of the development of Iris Plus, and we look forward to that continuing to be part of Iris Plus as we go on. If you go on to the Iris Plus site, you will see on a menu on the left-hand side, there are different tabs. One of them is to collaborate. So you can input your information there. We'll receive an email, and then we'll get back in touch with you.
Great. Yes, there are many ways to collaborate with us, but I'm going to now turn back to Amit to just share a few closing remarks. Amit?
Sure. No, thank you. And I realize we are at time, and so I'll be brief. But I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. I think just to loop back to where we started, we are launching Iris Plus with our vision in mind. And I envision a future where impact is integrated into all financial decisions. Where social and environmental impact is built into the system, so that the more we invest, the more positive impact we're generating for society and for the planet. Now, of course, at the moment that we're in right now, these are troubling times in many respects. We have a lot of challenges the world is wrestling with climate change and rising inequality, and a whole bunch of implications of those challenges that we're seeing in communities all over the world. At the same time, I'm encouraged by a couple of things. One is that we have a greater sense of urgency, and minds are more open to revisiting the way that we do fundamental things, like think about the purpose of capital and the way we invest our money. And we have a more kind of resources at our disposal as a global society than ever before. Financial resources, human capital, and I am really excited about the potential of us as a community channeling all of that intellect, all of that capital, all this knowledge and expertise into trying to achieve the greatest impact we can possibly have. And I hope that every single one of you participating in this call and your colleagues all around the world see your own role in shaping that future. And we at the GIIN are providing Iris Plus to this community as a public good to help you do so. And I hope you all continue to work with us to make sure that we do build a world where impact is at the heart of how we think about our financial systems and how we use our money. So thank you everyone who's contributed to get us to this point, and thank you all for joining us here today.
Wonderful. And with that, we thank you all for joining today, and we're thrilled to offer Iris Plus to support all of your impact ambitions. Have a great day.